We have entered a time when technology makes a myriad of ways to teach, learn, and communicate possible. Yet for many students, a large part of their school experience is much the same one experienced by their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Now, of course, there are elements of the traditional American model of education that are worthy of being kept, such as the wide range of subject areas offered that form a broad and well-rounded education. However, just as schools had to change a century ago to prepare students for the change from an agricultural society to an industrial one, today we need to strive to make the shift from an educational model still based largely on the industrial society to one geared towards a creative, information-based society. This includes elements currently termed as 21st century skills, such as gathering and analyzing information, using critical thinking skills, and working collaboratively to solve problems. With change so rapid and commonplace, students today, more than ever, also need to learn how to learn. This new era presents challenges beyond just integrating technology. Existing and emerging technologies are providing powerful tools for teachers to use, but this needs to be coupled with a highly student-centered pedagogical approach if genuine and effective change is to take place. There will certainly be key things to learn that will call for traditional methods, such as memorization and drill and practice. But these are items I like to call foundational concepts, the things that form the basis for being able to move into higher-order thinking skills. Information, facts if you will, are no longer difficult to locate and gather. The challenge now is learning how to screen, validate, verify, and then use that information to solve the problems and challenges one faces. So what does this mean in practice? To me, it means we need to move away from simple fact recall-oriented methods as much as possible, though some use of that method will still be needed as part of the foundational learning mentioned earlier. But even there, it is possible to use our new tools to help with what I consider to be the key element of success, student engagement. An engaged learner who has intrinsic motivation for the subject is much more likely to retain the knowledge and skills that have been gained and be able to move into taking their work into higher levels of thinking. Being able to think critically, solve problems, communicate well, and work in teams are all important skills for this creative, innovative, and information-driven era. Whether using technology or not, our lessons and activities need to be more constructivist and student-centered whenever possible, and include elements and structures that have as much basis in the real world as possible. Interestingly, most of these approaches are not new. Some have been touted for decades, and there are schools and certainly teachers who have employed their use for a long time. However, in my opinion, as long as the current politically motivated, intense focus on high-stakes testing dominates our educational decision-making, approaches that best develop higher-level thinking skills will receive lesser attention. The reason is simple. You can make faster short-term gains for the purpose of improving test scores through methods such as drill and practice. If left at the lower levels of memory and knowledge, though, these foundational concepts aren't synthesized into the higher levels, and then you might end up with a student population that takes tests with decent success, but has difficulty solving a problem for which there is no step-by-step to follow. I think in many ways school has become a game played by students, teachers, parents, administrators, and communities alike. We get consumed by the blips of points that are scored and can easily lose sight of what should be the long-term goals of learning. If you get a 90% on something, but later can't recall or use the information you are supposed to have learned, have you really learned anything other than how to score points in the game? Two books that seek to break this paradigm are Improving Student Learning One Teacher at a Time by Jane Pollack and The Game of School by Robert Fried. Notions such as not grading everything, giving less homework, focusing on mastery of goals, and being more student-centered are but a few of the things mentioned in these books. We just have to be bold and daring enough to put them into use and help those who might doubt the methods understand that we need to look towards long-term achievement and not just short-term gains. The small steps we make are just wanderings if they don't lead anywhere. And we need to learn how to move beyond buzzwords, which can bring great style to what one says, but with little substance underneath. How do we do that? By making sure that the buzzword is always clearly defined so it can have real meaning and use. Two major buzzwords of the current day are data-driven and rigor. I am all for using data to help make decisions, but more needs to be done to help teachers understand how to effectively use data as part of their teaching routine. Also, some of the most tried and true student data, anecdotal observations that we do every day, are not necessarily easy to quantify or record, but it can provide important information about a student's performance and shouldn't be dismissed because one can't put a number to it. We also need to make sure we spend enough time nourishing our students on the teaching and learning side and not get overly obsessed with the assessment side. After all, you don't make a pig fatter by weighing it, you feed it. As for rigor, I am just not a fan of a word that brings up the thought of rigor mortis, dead and stiff. I know what is probably intended by the word in educational settings, that being intense and challenging. But too often I think it simply gets reduced to make things harder. Sometimes for no other reason than just to make things harder. More difficult does not necessarily mean better. Personally, I like the word vigor. To me it has connotations of challenge with life and vitality, things that should always be descriptors of learning. To put a wrap on my educational philosophy, I truly believe that we are approaching a crossroads in education. Will we forge ahead into using innovative methods that have the promise to help our students have experiences that are more connected, more personal, and more applicable to their future? Or will we hold ground and continue to do things in the ways that we always have? The students are ready. The eagerness is there. And I think many adults are ready as well. Whether it be one district, one school, or even just one teacher at a time, by aiming higher in developing thinking, by looking longer in setting goals, and striving further to engage students with great learning experiences, we can achieve the education we want for all our students.